going on, everybody? Coming into weekly target here for Bitcoin, so I just figured I'd hop on live, just kind of take a peek at it, go over it. Yeah, just gonna go ahead and take a peek here at Bitcoin, right? So, we're coming into basically what is the average of price from last week. All right. Generally, that's a target for the following week once it's generated. So, i.e., this week here, right? So, as we came into this week, that was an area that I was targeting. Obviously, we were trading, well above that back on Monday, essentially, and we've seen a good amount of moves here throughout the last few days here. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of break down the overall moves that we've seen over the last week, essentially, or this week so far. And so one thing being is that we just came into a pretty key level here, about 56,800. Potentially going to see a bounce out of this region. Otherwise, one thing that I start off every week looking at is the previous week range. All right, so on the full screen you can see this pretty clearly if your phone is in TikTok mode, I guess, or landscape or whatever it is, straight up and down. You might not be able to see the whole thing, but essentially we had the last week's range right here. Okay, and we started off this week. Pretty sure Monday's here, obviously. We start off this week, right, with a nice little move up, right? We basically came up, tagged the range high, okay, of this overall range from last week. We effectively swept the previous day high at the time. So this was yesterday, Wednesday, when we did this. This is right at the CPI, data release, what have you. And yeah, it was just a really technical setup. I made a pretty short video about it yesterday here on TikTok as well. So, we were looking for that sweep of the high, and then basically all week long we've been targeting this weekly average, basically. All right. So, is that the end all be all as far as the correction would go? I don't necessarily. It's a little tough to say because, like I said, we've still got this whole entire range to kind of roll through here. So if we do start losing that, then I would say we're probably going to rotate the whole range back down to like 54,000, maybe even come back down to these July lows. So that's kind of the next little line in the sand, right? Is really where we're at, this 56,800 area. Now, earlier this week as well, I'm going to take off this, a little bit more. That was more locally. Let's go ahead and clear off this Monday area here. All right. Essentially, that's been ran through. We'll get back to that here in a second. Okay. So one thing that I really want to point out, which is it's very interesting that the stock market is just getting such a strong move to the upside, and you're not seeing it at Bitcoin. And I guess it's not super interesting in the sense like they don't have to correlate together. I did anticipate a little bit more downside here on the stock market, so it's interesting to see how that's playing out. We're going to take a look at that on this live stream as well. But basically, the overall range that we've been putting in for Bitcoin ever since we made that all-time high is literally, the low of that comes in pretty much right at where we topped out on Monday. All right, so the key for any more upside, in my opinion, going forward in next coming days, weeks, what have you, is pretty much 60,700, and it's literally just by pulling a fixed range volume profile, which you can get up here right on TradingView, and just drag it right across all the price action. And it's going to give you the overall range, right? So this is what it looks like. Once again, probably a little bit more clear on the horizontal side or the full screen. I guess you could hit it on TikTok here. But yeah, you can see that we were living in it a little bit earlier this week. I actually took the short from here because just like this week right here, we have the weekly average that we were targeting. This was last week's weekly average, right? So when we came down, we made that huge dump beforehand. This was our target that we were looking at last week. Now this week we were looking at this one, so on and so forth. Those are some smaller moves, but of the grand scheme here, just really, on a simple base for any more upside, and we're starting to lose that level right now. It's 60,700, right? You want to see, the price action get back into this range. At that point of control is going to be, our natural target. Back at like 67, and then that like at that level we'll start reevaluating. But otherwise, the thing I've been kind of pointing out is that we've just been kind of hitting our head right on this. And if you go to the daily time frame, especially, you get a better picture of that, right? So Does it necessarily mean we have to go, crazy crash to the downside? Doesn't necessarily, but it's just at the moment that's the outlook that I'm looking at, right? So when we look at the overall range as a whole, we dipped out of it in May. All right. Pretty briefly, a couple days back in, right? Rotated it once again. We dumped out of it in July here, right? It wasn't super, quick, but we recovered the lows, got back inside the range, within a few days, and then we made it up, actually rotated the range all the way to the high perfectly before dumping out once again. And now since we've broken down from this last move here, all we've been doing is we've back tested the range low at the moment. And we lived in there one day. Otherwise, it's just been wick, and then just breaking down lower, right? So at the moment, we just kind of have to anticipate more downside, right? So there's some key levels just below us, one of which being, like I said, that weekly average, which we just now hit. And from here, we just, simple couple key levels, right? Just level by level. We got a couple of dailies down below us if we break any lower. Right now, it does look like it's kind of holding at the moment. This definitely would be an area for, a bounce, right? So something to kind of view here at the moment, but otherwise, it's 55, 54, the July low. And if we lose the July low, effectively at that point, we would have broke out of the entire range that we've been trading in. We back tested it, right? That 60,700. And in theory, I'm looking down to 42,723 is the next major key level, which is a quarterly naked point of control, which is essentially an inefficiency in the market. That's the highest area, traded from, a prehistoric range, basically from earlier this year. And that would be the next key level if we continue lower. So as simple and just like unbiased as it could get, 60,700 is what we want to see reclaimed for upside. Otherwise, we're kind of ranging around in these regions right here. Lose the July low, which is basically 53,216. And 42,723 is probably going to be that next major area. At least for me, that's what I'll be looking for, right? So that's pretty much the gist there on Bitcoin. We'll take a look at a couple others as well. Answer some questions. Yo, man, haven't seen since the Lambo list. That was such a long time ago, my friend. But welcome back. I hope you haven't not been around since 2021 or I haven't crossed your path. But either way, welcome. Help, Wirecoin's tokens needed, blockchain tech works fine without them. Help, Wirecoin's tokens need. I mean, they're not. Honestly, like if as far as a fundamental question there, I couldn't tell you. But we can look at the charts and let's take a look at some price action. Otherwise, talk to me, boss man. How you doing? MX397. Is the 4-year cycle in play? Personally, I don't necessarily agree. Not agree. I don't necessarily subscribe to that 4-year cycle anymore, right? And I'll be honest. I'll be the first one to say that I definitely was a 4-year cycle junkie back in the day. And really, what changed that, and not to honestly, like up until of recent, I'm just going to kind of zoom in here a little bit. Let's take a look and see how the price action goes. This daily naked point of control is pointless now. It's just a target on the downside. The 4-year cycle is something that, personally, what I guess like what I've been trying to present about that is that, it's been I'll back it up. 2017 when I started, investing, trading in crypto. About 2019 is when this 4-year cycle kind of got, introduced to everybody. 2021 came around, right? The last, major bull rally that, is memorable. And generally, we did pretty much, still keep with that 4-year kind of time frame. You had the halving, a year and a half later, market topped, what have you. Could we be seeing something like that again? And the thing is, for me, is that back in 2021, even that was such a it's one of those things where like when the majority of people finally subscribe to something, it worries me, right? So like even like back then it wasn't necessarily super subscribed to. And like I said, I was a huge 4-year junkie. I was anticipating the market to top literally 1 month later than it did. And with, somebody brought up Lambo list, right? Like I had much higher targets at the time, right? And it just didn't play out. Even caught, anybody that was targeting that type of cycle, whatever, or based on that alone, I guess, really caught anybody off guard. But one of the biggest things that I've been, looking to over the years is the housing market, right? So, and there's, it's big time frames, right? 16, 18 to 20 year cycles. They date back hundreds of years. if not thousands, right? And basically, my idea of recent has been that we could be actually witnessing Bitcoin and crypto, building out the first 20 year, and give or take, right? It's an average, right? Like, so there's multiple years in the housing market where it was like start to finish 17 years, and then there was some 21 years, so the average of that is about 18 to 20 years. And Bitcoin was, basically born in 2009. The last housing market technically started, depends on how you want to look at it, but obviously 2008 was the top. In theory, the bottom and the new turn to come back up was like 2011. So, crypto is pretty much born in that same time frame. So it's just a little side note I've been kind of keeping back of my mind. So, but I don't get really overly involved anymore with the 4 year, idea. I think it's been pretty kiboshed so far, and one of the biggest pieces of it was that you would never have a new all-time high before the halving. There was things like you would never come back down below the previous all-time high, which we did that obviously back in the summer of 2022, where we had 20K was the 2017 all-time high. We went to 69, and then we came back down obviously below that. So there's just been many pieces of that as far as like how time wise, I guess, maybe it's still on par, and maybe that's, par for the course. But for me, I tend to look a little bit more nearsighted. I have some bigger time frame ideas and everything like that, but I'm really looking at like what the next few days, weeks, months like could look like. And I don't get too wrapped up in any more predictions or like, that's what everybody wants. And that's what everybody wanted back in the day. And I used to do it just to appease everyone. And it was like, if this happens, you could see this. But people marry those ideas. They don't play out more times than not. It's just not really worth it. So I just rather take it, kind of day by day and be a little bit more of the local price action in that sense. And like I said, I got some bigger ideas still, but we'll take a look at it here. Thinking BTC hits 3842K. What do you think? I tend to agree. I covered that just a bit ago, right? So the overall idea, and mind you, I hate to kind of just continually bring up these past little moves that we were trading, but I think that they matter, right? So for me personally, obviously we saw this move up, and we were living, above the previous all-time high, 69K. Everybody's getting excited. You got ETFs coming in. You've got ETH getting ETF approval, all the good stuff, right? Up here, I was looking pretty heavily for a reversal pattern, right? Just to see if we were going to have one. Ethereum actually had a major reversal pattern that put in for like 2 years. It completed at 4K. Target was 2,100, so about a 50% drop. Obviously, we just hit that, and we did not get the equal drop out of Bitcoin, but pretty close. But anyways, I was looking for some reversal patterns up in this region. One of which being this all-time high shark that we were looking at, right? So this is a harmonic pattern, sequence of Fibonacci's. Personally shorted 71,400, right? Scared me a little bit on the pullback up to here, but it took 6 weeks to play out, and these were the 3 targets we had, right? So we had the 0.5 Fibonacci. Skipped the gold pocket right to the 886, right, which is where we came down to there, got a nice little bounce, and then straight down to the 113. Now from there, right, and I'm bringing this up for the idea behind potentially 42K and why I look there at the moment, right? So it's not just because it's like, oh, that's a a fan favorite right now, or everybody's looking lower because we broke lower. Like, I've been targeting 42,000 potentially, and this is the thing. I'm not been married to this idea like just sell everything and it's got to go down, but super cautious, and especially because of the Ethereum pattern. Now, I will say the Ethereum pattern has pretty much played out, so we could very well see some changes here, and that's why I say the 60,700 is important, because if we start to live back above that region, we're back in the range, and we could come back up and challenge these highs. But at the moment, the more probable direction is probably down to 42K, and this is why. So we had that pattern there, saw that move there, then we had a new quarterly range, right? So once again, just new data coming in, got to be able to change it. And that's another reason why I think that just blindly or like vaguely or heavily going like a 4-year cycle, and this is my price target, and it's going to be a year from now. Like, if you go out to the further you go out in projections and predictions, I think is just where the more you're at risk of just being incorrect, right? Like nobody's got a crystal ball. And I feel that many people get, very, you don't want to be known for that either, right? So even for me, it's like 42K. I'm not like shouting it from the mountaintops that like, oh, we could go there, because if that doesn't hit, we got to 48 and I was targeting that from 71. I'm happy with that. If that does become the low, I'm good with that. I've made adjustments, I've prepared myself and so on. But looking for, huge projections, whatever. So that was a rant. That was a rumble. Okay, so we got to the target of the shark pattern. All right, so that was on July 4th. Okay. Now from there, what do we have? Well, we reclaimed the lows over here, and that was at the time that was the difference, right? We just kind of bounced around below, and we had targets lower. You reclaim this low right here. Well, now we're back in the range, and once again, what are we going to do? We're going to rotate the range, rotate it right to the high. And then from there, same thing, because of the Ethereum pattern. And then I actually identified two potential reversal patterns on the S&P 500 as well as the NASDAQ. Just, things that provided caution, and they all kind of aligned at the same time, right? You had Bitcoin challenging a range high. You had Ethereum still with like pretty decent targets to the downside. And then you had the stock market potentially putting in some reversal patterns. So it's just things that like all kind of correlated at the same time. Started to break down, got the move to this region right here. Everybody's kind of targeting 50 to 52K. Honestly, I didn't think that would be a huge area, and it's so far it's played out to be one. So that just kind of is what it is. But bounce back, bouncing our head off of the overall range, right? And then for me, we've got these levels down below us. But honestly, like the fact that we've broken down now. Which is just the biggest piece of this. Like so far we had just been dipping out of the range, back into the range, dipping out of the range, back into the range. But on this last move, we've actually managed to drop and not get back in, right? So now we're, pretty decently away from it. But that can change, right? So it's just all about 60,700. I've been saying 61K pretty much, right? You get back above 61K and then we got some levels above us. But for now, this is just a series. I'm trying to make sure this lines up nicely for everybody. This is pretty much just now a series, right? You got your high, your low, lower highs, lower low, lower highs, lower low. Potentially the next move down is another lower low. So that's just the overall idea for Bitcoin at the moment. I do want to cover Ethereum really as well, maybe some altcoins, although I just feel like it's such a tough time with the alts, because if Bitcoin's going to have another drop, obviously the altcoins are going to come with it. But you don't want to overlook certain key areas, because we have hit a few big regions that I ended up picking up a few altcoins on this dip. Even though I was anticipating Bitcoin to come down lower, Ethereum hit key levels, and a couple other altcoins, not all of them. Do I hold spot Bitcoin? I actually do. The majority that I hold is usually in Ethereum of the last few years. And it was just, because I ended up getting, just the price of it at the time and things like that, and I'm talking like back in 2000 and, the COVID crash and like stuff like that, like just the averages of what I was looking to do. And I was looking to do what did you need? Like 15, I think you needed 32 Ethereum to stake it. So I was looking to get, that back in the day. So I ended up like kind of converting a lot into Ethereum, but I do have Bitcoin. Average price for me on the Bitcoin, it's not like like I said, of the two, it's actually Ethereum that would be larger. I'm probably back down in like the 29, 30K area for the average. But yeah, I'm looking to pick up some more as well. And then Ethereum is definitely my bigger one. And I actually did sell majority of my Ethereum that I accumulated. Even the recent, which we'll get into that in a second, but so Bitcoin, hit some questions real quick. We'll scoot over again. Which exchange do I use to short B? So for the only thing I'm about to get one of those Palau IDs, but I've had to bounce back and forth from many exchanges. But right now I actually used a prop firm, which has been really nice, because I used to use Bybit, right? And Bybit is just, I think most traders would agree that that's the best liquidity as far as so even this chart on Bitcoin right now is the Bybit chart. All right, and Reason being is that, you know, the levels are just super respected, right? Yeah, very, very, very well respected as far as the liquidity would go. The only downfall to that is I can't trade on Bybit. So right now I'm trading on Blowfin. I've traded on Binget. You know, I've every like 6 to 12 months because of because of KYC. You know, I ended up getting brushed around. So of now, I'm on Blowfin, and I'm sure we'll have to move off again. But Breakout is a prop firm, but the only thing with that is you have to pass an eval, and it's a little. It's got specific rules, which, you know, generally most people probably aren't able to follow. But yeah, I enjoy Blowfin, and you can short it really nicely. Obviously, the user interface is really well. And the only thing is you have to kind of like look at the price action, right? So like, for example, like right now Bitcoin is 57,061 on Bybit. I'll have to go if I was looking along, you know, or looking for an area where I wanted it to hit, you know, that weekly average, for example, was 56,778. It's probably not going to be the exact same level on Blowfin. I have to kind of look at the difference in price action, right? So generally it's like $50, $60 off or something like that. So like if I was to preset something, you know, which I don't usually do for like short-term trades, but for like altcoin, like spot buy and holds or like big positions, sometimes I'll put a buy and hold. You just gotta look at the difference in price and just kind of know that there's a discrepancy. I'm gonna look at Ethereum real quick, and then the Cardano chart that somebody just requested, and then take a look at the stocks too. And once again, not to beat, just in case anybody that has not seen this, it's just, you know, this was kind of the pattern at play that really like put the big caution on me as we came into this year. If you go back into the Discord, I mean, I was talking about it all the way back here when we were trading, and we actually bought the exact low at 1579, and it was back in November of last year, basically October, November, I guess. And the target of this was actually between 3,200 and 4,000, right? So when we came up to the $3,300 mark, that's actually where I exited a lot of my like spot bags, 75% to be pretty much exact. And you know, it's a tough thing that I've had to learn to do is you know, sell the rips, right? And what I mean by that is that I obviously did not sell the exact high, right? We went substantially higher, 20% almost, right, on Ethereum. Granted, the average of what I ended up dumping was from this region here, right? So from like $1,200. Once again, did not buy the exact low. Ended up buying pretty heavily, you know, around this $1,200 mark, almost 200% move. And then at the same time, you know, offloaded a good amount of just other altcoins and stuff like that I'd been picking up along the way. Solana was one of them that I actually offloaded a little early. Once again, did not sell the high on that move, but I bought it at $12, offloaded it at 66. So 4x that. You know, I really don't care about catching the entire move anymore. I just care about what I can, you know, conduct, I guess, while I'm holding it, right? Market ended up going a little bit higher, and once again, this was in February, so we obviously, you know, ran up till March. Peak, you know, excitement at that time. Obviously, the other altcoins were booming. I ended up putting some of the position I took out of here into some other altcoins like XRP and Dogecoin and Sui and Ondo, and, you know, just went in very short-term positions. Dogecoin was a 100% move, like, and just kind of like aggressively was taking, you know, things out, noting that we had a potential, you know, reversal coming. So, anyways, pattern completed. Target of this was back to the B point. Took a substantial 6 months. You know, mind you, this was 2 years to, you know, fulfill. Took about 6 months to get back to that point. We tapped off of it really nicely. So now, as far as ETH does go, coming back down to the low again, that 2,100 and potentially sub 2K. Like, that's kind of like my next buy zone. Would be this, like, you know, sub 2,000, I guess. So it's something I'm like really paying attention for. But like I said, the only thing is that this pattern is technically played out now, right? So, you know, that being a major target, like filling in the gold pocket would be, you know, the next major target of this. But this has definitely got the risk of being, you know, done, and then we continue up. So it's just something that, you know, I'm aware of, and trying to make the best informed decision around some of that stuff right now. But looking at Bitcoin, obviously I still think we have some downside. Take a look at the stocks, and I'm not going to take a look at a ton of stocks, but just maybe the SPY, the NASDAQ, and a few of the stocks that we were looking at as far as when they came into some key levels. And like I said, not everything did, but a bunch of things did, right? So it's just like you had to be ready, I guess, for a couple things. And then, obviously I'm not trying to go all in, but I didn't want to be all out. So that's kind of what the way it was. And mind you, when I did exit my positions up here, it was 75%. So I still had 25% in just in case the market ran off without me. I didn't want to be 100% sidelined, but now I have a substantial amount pretty much ready to deploy. I ended up picking up a couple things on that last drop too. Litecoin, oddly enough, was one of them. VeChain, GALA, and a couple others. Polkadot was one. I think they all hit key levels. So I'm going to see how much time I have here, and I'll try to take a look at all those really quickly. See if we got any more big questions on here. We'll move on. Thoughts on waves? I haven't looked at waves in a hot minute. Thoughts on Aerodrome? We can maybe take a look at that. Okay, thoughts on when ETH ETFs will finally make a difference. So I'm a big charts are king and the news don't matter type of guy, right? And a perfect example of that is the ETH ETF. All right, so let's just pretend we were traveling back in time to this date right here. In last quarter, I was actually giving trade alerts at another company that I no longer do that for anymore. But and I've realized that I don't necessarily want to give straight trade alerts. Granted, I gave over 150 alerts with over almost 400% win percentages and like a 63% win rate. And I mean, it did really well, but everybody relied on it too much, and I didn't enjoy that type of community as much, right? So, but anyways, I bring that up because, and once again, I was on an old exchange, so BingX at the time, and then there was a KYC issue. But I remember being on the beach. It was like Memorial Day, something like that, May 20 something. And when Bitcoin revisited the 71,400, where I shorted it, looking for 54, I ended up shorting ETH right here, right? So I ended up, mind you, selling out of the spot positions here, and it wasn't a crazy position, but it was just enough to hey, if there was going to be a move, I want to be a part of it. I ended up shorting the exact move up here, and all this was a sweep of the previous week high, and this was on the day that ETH ETFs were getting either approved or they were getting, BlackRock was applying or something like that, right? The news was hot, man. I'm talking, like I said, it was $71,000 Bitcoin, $39.50 was exactly where I shorted from, and the reason I bring that up is because of the news, right? And I think that it's great in the grand scheme that you can even trade and invest. And bigger picture is investing, right? There's definitely people trading actively ETFs, but opening up the financial instruments to the people in this world that have big dollars that are not going to keep, even if you're on Coinbase, right? Like Coinbase is kind of like my main, aside from a hardware wallet, which once again, risky and scary to hold 6-7 figures on a hardware wallet, because even things like Ledger, who went so long with being top dog, got breaches, security issues. There's just no real insurance, right, in that world. So the ETFs obviously do allow for, I think, the progression of and the evolution of this market. But for me, I just the news itself sometimes I think is just that it's news. CPI, another one. I always joke around. I could never have a detailed conversation with anyone on what the implications of CPI, PPI, or whatever. There's another one too. And I know when the time that they get released is, because generally it's in the New York session. It's at 8:30, right? And if we're looking for a move for the day, it's generally then, right? So yesterday was a good example. You had good whatever news, and the market dropped, right? And it was a technical setup. This was a technical setup. All that was to just kind of go over, the idea once again that the news is what keeps everybody emotional. I guess is my other little mantra I go by too. So yes, I'm not ignorant to it. I stay up to par with a good amount, but it's just I could go I go every day without looking at the news and wondering and worrying, and actively trading this market or noting where the market would and could go pretty decently, right, without having to worry about the news, I guess. But to answer your question with the ETFs and all that, like I think that that's obviously what will usher in the multi trillions, into the market over time. Is and like I said, because I met a gentleman a couple months back, and he knows a couple multi-million-dollar families that they weren't going to go put 15 million on Coinbase, right? Or they weren't going to go do that, and now they have the ability to go through some other brokerage, whatever, hedge funds essentially, and through the ETFs and everything like that, and they're able to, invest in these things a little bit more securely. XRP, take a look at that. Okay, XRP, just to finish off the news rant, XRP is the most perfect example of news that it doesn't matter, right? It went through 2 periods of the greatest news that one of our cryptos could go through, and it was nothing burgers, right? Very technical moves on both the days, one of which being like last July. I really was anticipating XRP to hit this dollar mark. I thought really we had some juice, and I guess it still could. But this is pretty much the chart for me on XRP, and realistically, XRP does trade really nicely, but we've been pretty range bound for quite a while here. And 2 of the the 2 events I guess I was just talking about where the news, this one you could argue was, can you see that on the, yeah, this one you could argue was, okay, this was when the SEC, I can't remember, they obviously didn't drop the lawsuit, but maybe they were saying they were going, I don't know, something like they were saying they were going to drop it, maybe, whatever the case was. It was a huge news day. I mean, I remember people fist pumping the air, thinking like, yes, this is it. Everybody, rage bought XRP, had 100-something% move on the day. And at the time, my business partner, and if you guys have the privilege of learning with this guy and following him at all, Magic Internet Money, give him a follow here on TikTok, YouTube. He's not as active daily, but when you can catch him, it's always a good one. And I bring him up because he was trading a harmonic at the time, and he literally picked up, and he even had like a little bit of leverage behind it, nothing crazy, like 2x or something. But he was picking up XRP down in this region, and he was able to use fib time, and he literally timed out the target point of 90. I think it was actually 86 cents. So and it was a fib timed out for this exact date, well before we had any news, right? Whatever. 96 cents was what he targeted. Or I'm sorry, 86 cents. Sorry. The top was at like 93. So he literally picked up the absolute low at 30 cents, offloaded it all at 86 because of his technical analysis, right? Everything was in play. Boom, boom, boom. And then while everybody else probably came in and bought this up, and a side note from this all is that the news behind that, like why did the price stop at 90 cents, right? And then completely give it all back up. And then at this point too, now you got the news completely over with, or the lawsuit completely over with. And correct me if I'm wrong there. I guess I'm not 100% sure if that's even really what happened, but it sounded like that. And you got nothing, like just a pop back up. We got a couple of levels of resistance right here, and that's it. And then once again, just back to the average 55 cents it's been chilling in. So I bring that up in the sense of news just doesn't, news is just going to keep you emotional, right? And what I mean by that is that people will hold their bags longer because they think like this candidate is going to change, the policies, and crypto is going to run and all these things. And if you're a long-term holder, then hey, it shouldn't matter anyways, right? Like you should be willing to withhold through decades and wars and all the things. But if you're short-term, or if you're even concerned with smaller time frames, I mean, that news it just doesn't matter. But I will say XRP, I still do see a world where we get to this dollar sooner than later. And when we do get this break, I'm sure it'll be pretty nice. It's been probably one of the tightest bound projects for a while. And I know $1 is not that sexy, right? Everybody's probably looking for all-time highs and things like that, and I'm sure we'll get there one day. But in the nearish future, potentially another drawdown into this 33 cent box. But then I'm looking at the dollar mark to like $1.11. But it's pretty much this range bound. We really got to clear, honestly, 75 cents. Like getting above 75 cents is kind of the last little line in the sand for now, and you can see it pretty clearly as we go back. But otherwise, yeah, nothing really out of the ordinary there. Just because we're here, and don't get too excited about my huge arrows. It's actually not that big of a move there. But VeChain was one. So when we were up at 71K Bitcoin and I was expecting a pullback, obviously I'm looking at the altcoins as well to try to identify some key regions that we could look to. VeChain, the regions I was looking down to, we didn't actually hit it all quite yet, but if we see a Bitcoin move down to that 42K-ish level, I imagine we could see another 30. It's only about 30% to the downside only. Sounds crazy. Also, VeChain sounds crazy. Most people are probably like, oh, that old project, what are you doing with that? But just like XRP, these are the most tightly bound projects at the moment. They might not see huge new all-time high 50 to 100x moves, but a potential 10x, and that doesn't even get you back to all-time high. That's kind of what I'm going to be hunting down on a lot of these, which is kind of what I anticipate. Because when we do get a break on VeChain, and once again, don't get too crazy with the arrow like it's a guarantee. But this is how I'd be targeting it. Would be around this 1.5 cent. Now, mind you, these are going to be spot positions that I'm taking, so I'm prepared to be underwater a little bit. I'm happy to buy it here versus here, or have it from here, and see if we take it up into these regions. And even this area here, which is like 7 or 8 cents, the main target being up at like 13, that'll be a substantial rally, right? Not sure when we're going to get it, and obviously not sure if we're going to get it, but I do see a world where the altcoins get some gas again here, probably by the end of the year. Cardano. Before I move on to another question, I'm going to go through all the questions here in a second if catch back up. Cardano is another one, a very old. I don't want to say old, but it's a project that actually has some history. I know like a lot of people like to dog on some of the dinosaur coins is what they call it, and maybe they're not the best performers compared to like the brand new projects, and that's still going to probably be the best performers, I would say, just like how Solana, brand new last cycle, was one of the best performers. I think things like Ondo, Aerodrome, Velo, if it's the same one you're talking about, those I think have some legs for probably the bigger returns. But then they may become Cardanos at the end of it, right? Like if we get another pretty decent little altcoin rally, you just got to be prepared to, the 50x and 100x days, I think, are not going to be as easy as they used to be, and they weren't easy to begin with, right? Last time around, Cardano actually was one of the few that actually 100x'd in 2021 from the 2018 low. We went from 3 cents to $3. It was very few that did that, right? Matic, I think, was another one, at least 50x'd. Solana obviously was one. I remember trading. Solana was one of the very first trade setups I put in the when I was still on Telegram. It was $1 at December 2020, and I was targeting $40, a 40x. That's where I sold it at too, and it still went up to like $300. Can you believe it? But very simple outlook here on Cardano is that I've been waiting on this little region. Once again, obviously there's no guarantee we get it or when, but that would be like the ideal area that I'd look to kind of see where Cardano come down to. I know that if you're holding Cardano, you don't want to hear that it potentially has another big drop coming. It's a really big drop too. So like I said, it's kind of almost hard to picture it. We really probably have to see a huge market crash. But aside from that too, the 24 cent, right below pretty much where we're at now, which seems a little bit more, in tune. That's about 23%. So between that 9 to 25 cent mark is kind of where I'm looking to pick up Cardano for potentially the next. So, and I do want to preface this by saying I've been around, I know that I've been around for 2017, so 7, almost 8 years, right? Biggest things that I endured was the bull run of 2017, which was monstrous, right? There's just never going to be anything like that again, and that was a little bit of a downfall, I think, in some degree, in 2021, because I had went through that 2017 world and anticipated seeing it again, and it did not happen that way, right? And the biggest piece of that was that in 2017 at the peak, it was an $800 billion market, obviously Bitcoin being half of that and Ethereum being a quarter of that, which we still have today, right? Bitcoin is half the market share or more, and Ethereum is about a quarter. So that leaves literally, that's 75% Bitcoin, Ethereum. That leaves 25% of the entire market into thousands of coins. And at the time in 2017, there was only 2,000 projects, only 2,000. At the end of 2021, that grew into 20,000. All right. Today, because of all the Solana meme coins, especially, there's over 2.4 million projects. And, you know, we've only probably tripled, quadrupled in market size, which once again, Bitcoin and Ethereum still hold 75%. There's not enough capital to go around. And even if obviously, yes, like new capital will come in, but even last like go around, right? Like we just didn't see the throw a dart at anything and it 10x'd. And I feel like that's something you need to prepare for, or at least I'm preparing for like that type of world. So where like I'm not looking to like overexpose myself to like a million projects or anything like that. I'm going to select a few. Obviously I'm in this market every day, and I'm able to manage the risk a little bit differently, and I'm looking to, like I said, I'm looking for potential 5 to 10x movers on like the next big run, and I'll be happy with that. Like I even if I miss the next 40, and once again I look back, like I did a 40x on Solana and I missed the other whatever, and it came back all the way almost to the entry, right? So it's just like the world we're in, you just never know how it's going to play out, and you really shouldn't care about how much more something can go up. It matters how much you made, right? And that's just kind of like how I work now. And I bring all that up because my biggest other goal is to actively try to identify key regions for altcoins, because obviously I know that nobody cares about Bitcoin. We have to manage it. We have to like, understand Bitcoin, because there is the majority of time, as we've seen, Bitcoin is going to run the market, right? And then you get that shift in dominance, and then finally you get little 3-month windows where the altcoins pump, but then it's a year before they do again. And if you look back, it's almost that same pattern each and every time. Last year at this time, we still had no altcoin movement really. I could be wrong exactly, but I know that like September, October was when the altcoins finally moved, right? And we had pretty much like a 5-6 month altcoin season, if you want to call it that. We actually had a really extended version because we went from October to March, and it's been about 5-6 months now that we haven't had that. So do I think that time is coming again? I do. Do I think it's going to be like right now? I don't know, so, but like in the next few months here, and realistically I target the end of this year. Fourth quarter generally is just, and that sounds like a broken record. I'm sure many people think that and have that idea set. My difference is that I still think we see like 42K Bitcoin, potentially, and back down to like 2K, sub 2K Ethereum. Maybe we fill these boxes on, Cardano. We fill the rest of the box on VeChain. We fill the rest of, a lot of these. I got some, big areas here, right? Solana front ran my box, man. $110, swept all the lows. But this is where I'm looking for Solana to come back down to like $80, right? Which is a substantial drop again from right now. That's 40 more %. Do we get it? I don't know. There's no way to guarantee it, but if we do, that's where I'm not really too interested in buying. I've cashed out all the things months ago, and maybe I miss. And this is the thing too. I'm not really concerned if I'm going to be a little late to the party if Bitcoin re-enters the $60,000 range, and we're off to make new all-time highs and the market actually kicks up, because I have multiple altcoins where I'm going to identify key levels and I'll be able to get in. But for now, I'm prepared and I'm just being patient. And I do the same thing last year, and I had to do the same thing year before that. And you just get these times where it's just, you want to be looking around while the market is slow and boring, because when things do finally hit these boxes, it's gonna be scary. Okay, if they do. And I'm already set, right? I'm already pre-buying in here. It just is what it is on spot. I'm not looking to leverage long or anything like that. I only leverage trade Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's the only two that you'll ever see me trading actively with leverage behind it. And the only reason I use leverage is to have less exposure on exchanges that I can't control, right? So like things like Blowfin, BingX, like if they go tits up tomorrow, my money's gone. FTX, another great example of that literally happening. So I put $5,000 on those exchanges that if it goes away, it goes away. But then I 20x leverage that, so that I'm essentially trading with $100,000. I don't, trade the whole 5K, aka 100,000 every trade, but I have 5,000 which I allocate to the trading account. And then that way I'm not putting $100,000 over into these foreign exchanges. And then once I get to a certain level, I back it back down to 5K. And then, like I said, if anything ever happens to that, it would suck, but it's 5K. A little lesson on leverage there. It's not just to like put in like $1,000 and 30x leverage and hope to 10x your money. Like that shouldn't be the way you treat it. Like you should treat it like if I'm going to put $2,000 on a Bitcoin trade on 20x, that means I'm trading technically $40,000. So my stop loss should be equivalent to what I would lose, right? So even though it'll look like if I'm going to put a 1.5% stop loss on 20x, like it's going to look like I'm losing 30%, but I'm not. I'm losing 1.5%, right, of 40K. So my $400 to $600 stop loss is what I aim to lose, is what I'm willing to bet to trade up to a 3 to 5% move, right? So that's the short-term trading little tidbit there. But Solana, another example. There's just many altcoins that kind of front ran these levels when we came down recently. So I'm still looking for some of these, still pretty patient. But like I said, there were some like VeChain. I did pick up some VeChain. Litecoin was another one. And there's a few, Sui was one, and I'll just showcase like some of the levels we were looking at here, right? So, I mean, look at Sui, man. What a spot on move. And it was just one little level down here. It was just quarterly 47 cents. Tagged it. Even if, I actually didn't buy the exact low there. I had an alert. So after this bounced up a little bit, I actually got in around this region, like 60-ish cents. And then, yeah, first take profit was the point of control and the 382, obviously there. And now we've got ourselves a situation where we're potentially, getting in the range, right? Now you got the gold pocket up here, run the range, 886 up here, about $2. But yeah, that's already, a decent little move here. And then if this collapses again, like I said, I'm still, we always have the risk of Bitcoin collapsing. So it's always going to be a fear. But anyways, okay, getting off topic. GALA, yeah, we're going to go over GALA. Is GALA done? Actually, GALA is one of my, and once again, I could be wrong, but like, I've got a handful of coins that I personally have deemed the ones I'm going to try to get into on any kind of major pullbacks right now. And GALA is one of them. GALA, Avalanche, BONK, and Quant. So similar to, when we're looking at like Cardano and things of that nature, a key region is still pretty decently below it. That's actually a really big drop. It's like 50%. So that's like where I have an alert to kind of go off on if we get it to it. But otherwise, it is, something to be said that we are, within this region, we've come down to a key level, which was the point of control. It's just going to depend on Bitcoin and everything, so it's, for me, it's getting out of this range pretty much, right? Which is basically, $34. So from here would be obviously a substantial move to the upside. And then we've got some pretty good areas up above, right? So, and this is basically the whole of it. But yeah, I mean, I think that we could see and revisit, these $76 and $98 areas at some point. I think we're just in a really big consolidation area for now, with the best entry, honestly, being potentially $10, which is a little bit down below us. So I know that's probably, it's not an amazing, like, buy now and, whatever. Obviously do whatever, is best for you. I'm sure most are already holding Avalanche, and probably from higher levels as well. But yeah, so as far as like some key upside to where we're not just ranging around anymore, is to get back above $35, right? From there, it's probably a little short move to 57, and then 76, and back to like 98. But otherwise, potential for that $10 is kind of like the fresh entry. Like if I was really looking for, like, I just had to have me some Avalanche, personally, that's kind of where I'd look for it. So GALA is essentially at all-time lows, and it's one of those ones that, obviously of note. It's a little bit riskier. Kind of reminds me of it's the other one that went to all-time lows pretty much. Algorand, right? So could this just completely, melt? I mean, it's at 1.5 cents. Not that that means anything, because we could definitely drop, 50, 60% still and start cutting into sub pennies. It sure could, and could it come down a little bit lower? I guess the all-time low is a little bit below that, a little 13 or 0.013. That was a target to the downside. That's already done. Doesn't really matter about that anymore. And yeah, so for me, yeah, I'm not looking at a huge like all-time high like again, and maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't, but you know, you've got this huge, let me just make this, there you go. You got this huge, it's a flat line, right? I mean, it's definitely, you know, in terms of like, oh, does this chart look strong? No, it does not, right? But by the time it does look strong, it's potentially a couple 100% away. Um, this is an area where I'm putting on risk. Like I said, it's not like I'm going all in on this, but this coin is similar to a V chain and another that, you know, I'm just looking to bring this back up to the macro, you know, like 382, potentially even just this, you know, area right here. And that's kind of, you know, I'd be happy with that. I don't know if we're going to get it, of course, and that's the risk we just all take, but I am looking for GALA for sure. And if we start to, you know, lose these lows and recover them, that would probably be maybe the next best play, right? And that's just assuming that, you know, Bitcoin takes a little bit more of a deeper dive than where we are now, right? But yeah, I mean, you're talking, you know, once again, not looking for 100x home runs, anything like that. You know, those days might be behind us as far as like catching those on a good amount of coins, but just recovering some of these, you know, some of these drops, it would just be plentiful, right? Obviously, if you've been holding this, and that's a 10x move right there. So yeah, you know, there's an untapped yearly average of price, which, you know, it's old at this point. This is multiple years, but if we start to get going, that's definitely a key region I'll be looking to. And then if we flip that, I mean, it's really the 32-cent mark. So definitely something I'll be managing, you know, as we go a little bit. But this is one that I've got my eyes on heavily, for sure. All right, GALA, Avalanche, BONK, and yeah. So Quant was actually one I did pick up here as well. So on the big drop, and this is like one of those times where even though Bitcoin didn't hit the area I was targeted, like, and the reason I targeted 43K was because that was about a 50% pull. You know, that really wasn't 50%, but when I was targeting Ethereum to fall 50% from March, right? Usually you don't get, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum go pretty well hand in hand. So I assumed that we were going to see a little bit more downside. We just obviously did not. But there was, and like I said, I was looking for key regions on a lot of these altcoins that where it made sense to get involved, right? So just like the Avalanche one, where it's like, all right, $10 was that major area. We're not there yet. We might not get there, but there's just other opportunities, right, that have come across. So Quant, there was an untapped 6-month level, a monthly negative point of control, almost back to all-time lows as well. Right here at $51, at least on the Binance chart. So that was, you know, definitely an area I was looking to pick up. And from here, once again, it's just going to depend on how Bitcoin's going to move at the moment. But some sizable upside, just like GALA, right? So these are the kind of the key regions that I'm going to be looking for. It might not happen until next year, right? But these are kind of what I'm looking for as far as that would go. And you're talking not a crazy sexy outlook, you know, 300-400%, 500%, something like that. But you know, that's kind of what I'm targeting on something like this. Obviously, we could go to new all-time highs and, you know, get to these levels and kind of readjust. You know, if I'm getting into these regions here, probably scale out maybe 50%, maybe 70%, leave 30% to run, right? And then have, obviously, if we pull back or just make adjustments as we go. But that'd be the idea, is we're kind of at the key region. A similar outlook to GALA. You know, if we can actually come down and make a new all-time low, kind of take, at least on this chart, I don't know if it's had a lower, you know, price on somewhere else, right, Bitmart or whatever. But at least for here, the low it's ever recorded was $40. So sweeping the all-time low would be an ideal area to be aware of if we sweep it and then reclaim, you know, pretty much $40. And then, yeah, I'd be looking to run this up, you know, basically back into like a couple $100. Over time. That's kind of where I'm looking at with Quant. And then BONK. BONK is only been around, at least on the Coinbase chart. I'm trying to think of BONK. I guess Pepe is the one I'm thinking of. Doesn't have much information, right? And just at a glance, overall range for all of the price action in history is this, right? So once again, started off pretty much December of 23, so only been around for the last 8 or 9 months. Coming into some low areas here. So I would say that between where we are now and this million zeros 1-3, which is like a 30% move. So that's the thing, right? It's like everything, you know, and like I said, we always got to be at the mercy of Bitcoin. There's always going to be a risk that it's, you know, going to pull back and, you know, could it go lower and all that stuff. But yeah, between where we are now and this, you know, pretty much that last low over here, that's probably, you know, if I was looking to pick up some bonk for, you know, even if it's just another run of this range, you know, that's kind of where I'd be. You're at the low of the range right now. So, I mean, just to be fair, like that's an area that, you know, if you're going to put on some risk can be there. Maybe you don't go all in here, you know, because we could still see another 20% move to the downside, but 30% maybe. But I mean, we've just ranged this, you know, just back and forth. Nice off the low, nice off the high, back to the low again. So I would say in this region right here, and then yeah, just really look to see, you know, how the progression off of that. I'm sure we'll, you know, bonk is one that could be a Shiba type of move, and once again, it's super, like, probably one of the most riskiest plays because it is just a literal meme coin. There's nothing behind it except for people buying it, which that's really all you need anyways. But you know, this could be one that just breaches off into the sky, you know, over the next year or two. But yeah, I mean, wouldn't be where I'd put my whole portfolio in, but that's definitely that's the area, you know, where we're at, to about a 30% decline where that is. All right. I wanted to try to keep this at about an hour, so we're at a little over that now. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. Thank you all for showing up and hanging out. Really wanted to kind of cover Bitcoin, especially as it was coming into the weekly target, right, that we were looking at for the week. I know it seems a little scary here, but that was definitely where we were targeting there, right? So I actually still have my short in. Took it from the 61.5, right, which was the Tuesday high, shorted there. Took a profit on that one as well, but I actually am anticipating lower, right? So updates will obviously be in the Discord. If you guys would like to join the Discord, it is in the link tree on my bio. Otherwise, stay tuned and be sure to, you know, tune in with these live streams. I'll try to do one maybe every day, one point or another. But yeah, thank you all for having me, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Till then, everybody, cheers.